Page 84, The Entertainer. It's an arrangement of a very popular ragtime piece. At the top of the page on 84, they're introducing a new sign, and that is the octave sign. The 8 VA with the dotted line after it. The 8 VA means go up an octave. If it's above the staff, go up an octave. If it's below the staff, go down an octave. The dotted line tells you how long you stay there. So in this case, instead of here, you're going to go up an octave higher, go here. And you stay there all the way to the end of the second measure because the dotted line stays there for that long. It's the only one I see in the piece, is right at the beginning. So big deal. Obviously you're going to move your hands around a little bit because the first two measures are up here, and then you got to immediately come an octave lower here. Of course, you got to look at the keyboard to see you got one measure rest to get there. Okay, so you can. So you may have to practice that move. Know where you were, know where you're going. Figure that out. In the second line, take a look at the first couple measures. The melody's in both hands because there's no harmony going on here. You just got to. Okay, that is in the left hand, right? It's got to sound like one hand plays the whole line. So if it doesn't, practice that. So it does, huh? At the end of the second line, the last two quarter notes, you have a D, D sharp with the second finger, and in the next line you have an E with the thumb. So you're moving the thumb under. This again is very common in piano playing, so get where you can do it without looking at the keyboard. That happens in a few places. Over on page 85, it's the last measure of the first line going into the first measure of the second line in the right hand. They're saying a 2, 1, and then for the second line the F sharp is a 2 again, and then a 1 on the A. It's doable. I think there's an easier way, and I'm going to suggest it. As much as I dislike putting a thumb on a black note, if I can help it, in this case it just makes it easier in other ways to do so. So I suggest the last two quarter notes of the first line, instead of a 2-1, you do a 3-2. So that when you get to the second line, you go ahead and use your thumb on the F sharp, 2 on the A, 3 on the C, 5 on the E. You're not crossing over the thumb at all. To me, that's a lot easier than their fingering. You can experiment with both and see what you like better. The fingering they give in these books is mostly just a suggestion. However, they're very knowledgeable in fingering, so most of their suggestions are actually pretty good suggestions. It's like, let's go back to page, well, we can go anywhere because it happens all over the place. We're on page 85. Take a look at, okay, page 85 is the second line, the last two measures, okay, in the right hand. You have that same pattern that we just talked about with the D sharp, and the E. Are you crossing there? Okay, that's fine. Another way of doing it, though, so you're not using the thumb so much, is use 2 on the D, 3 on the D sharp, and then the thumb is another way of doing it. When we play it together, I'm liable to do it either way because some of the fingerings are a habit to me, so I just do what I'm used to. In the last line on page 85, third measure, this is still the right hand, okay? You're up here in this position because you've been doing the pattern for the few measures before this, right? Then in the last line, third measure, you got to bring the thumb down to the B, and then the third finger on the D. Okay, just the thumb, just so you're aware of it. Now for the left hand, I pointed out the one thing in the left hand is there is okay. You can do that. You got a lot of staccato in the left hand, and it's important. In this ragtime, don't use any pedal, okay? We want this to kind of bounce along. This is not a smooth lyrical piece. This is a bouncy toe tapper. And their fingering is fine. You can use their fingering. In the second line on page 85, in the third measure in the left hand, you have the G and the B, staccato. And then you got to go down to the G. You may have to look down at the keyboard to see that. Okay, that's fine. Just so you're aware that the third line, now page 85, okay, third line, first measure. Left hand, there is an E and a B flat. And they're suggesting 4 and 1. I find that a little cumbersome myself, because prior to this, you're down here. Right? And then you got to come up here. I would suggest you play a 5-2, so you're not putting the thumb on the B flat. Then you can do the 3-1. Fourth line down, last measure. Left hand, it's an F chord. In the next measure, that's the first measure of the fifth line, that is an F minor chord. Remember, we lower the third. I do have a little problem with this piece, this music, all right? It's a nice arrangement, big deal, all right. But according to the time signature, every measure is supposed to have a certain number of beats. You know, a lot of people don't pay any attention to it, they just play the thing, they're not worried about it. If you look at the end of this piece, at the bottom of page 85, that last measure has 1 beat. Where are the other 3? Well, my tendency at that point is immediately look at the first. I must have a pickup measure, right? But if I look at the first measure, there's 4 quarter notes in there. Now, this is in cut time. So technically, that last measure has a half a beat. I think it would have been better, technically, if they would have filled out that measure with, they could have put rests in there if they didn't need any more. At least give it the full count it's supposed to have. At the bottom of page 84 in the left hand, look at the last 2 measures of the last line, the C and the E. They don't give you a fingering. I recommend a 2-1, a 2 on the C and a 1 on the E. You just came off of a G, okay? And this is a 4 chord in G major. That's a good fingering. Just a 2-1 on those. I don't know how much you're struggling with rhythm and countings. A lot of people have problems with counting. Generally, piano players eventually get to be really good at rhythms because we have to do so much of it. Take a look at the third line down on page 84, on right hand here, okay? I'm going to pretend we're in 4/4 time just for a moment, and where a quarter note gets a count. And we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, tie, 2, okay? This rhythm can throw people because it's... So think about it, you know, if the cut time is messing you up, mentally go into 4/4, just count twice as fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Because it's important that you understand the rhythm. Eventually you can go back to the cut time, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So you may have to work on the rhythm there a little bit. It happens in some other places. My concern is that you're just going to listen to it and think, oh, okay, I got it. And you're not going to really understand what the music is telling you because you've heard it and you just play it the way you heard it. I need you to understand. I don't need you to do anything. I would like you to understand what you're seeing in the music, and you can figure out the rhythm without listening to it first. I would challenge you, when you're learning a piece, learn it first without listening to it. And then, once you have it learned, you can go listen to it and see how others are playing it and see what you think. The last 2 measures, if you want to call it a measure, they're at the end of page 85, where you have the whole note C tied to a quarter note C. You can hold that down for a full 5 counts, right? The 4 for the, well, we're in cut time. You're going to hold it down for 2.5 counts. 2 counts for the whole note and a half a count for the quarter note. So it's a 1 and 2 and 1 off, right? Don't come up on 1, you come up on the end of 1. 1 and 2 and 1 and type thing. Fine, but the left hand has staccatos, okay? So don't let the left hand mess you up. The right hand stays down its full length. So it's 1 and 2 and 1 and. So the right hand comes up after the left hands come up. People tend to just lift them both at the same time, and that's not necessarily what's written. So don't lift them at the same time here. Hold the right hand down. Now because this is cut time, a half note gets a count. So a quarter note gets a half a count. So it's like 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. For that reason, I've slowed the metronome down to 50. So it would be a lot slower. So it's a 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. And I trust you can get in the tied notes okay, all right? If you can't, leave them out for a bit until you get the notes down and then put them back in. All it is just simply a matter of hanging on to the second note rather than playing it. That's all. Just don't play it. Hang on to the other note that long. So let's try this. I'm going to give us 4 counts. That's 4 half notes. And we'll come in together. So there's no pedal, of course. We don't need pedal. The right hand starting way up here. And the left hand, when it does come in, is going to come in down here. Now you can leave your left hand in your lap for a while since you've got so long to go. Just make sure you get your left hand up where it needs to be before it needs to be there. All right, don't wait. 1, 2, ready and go and. Rest. Rest.